talked extensively so far about mood in chess and about how it makes all the difference when you're at the board. If you're in a good mood, you're likely to play much better than you would do if you're in a really bad mood or you're feeling negative about chess. One of the very best ways to get yourself into a positive frame of mind, and this is what I want to talk about here, this is my next tip, is to look over some of your best wins from the past. Now, this is not an ego trip at all. This is a morale boosting mechanism which makes you feel good about yourself, and when you get into this frame of mind, you can come to the board and play much better than you would do otherwise. It's getting back to this idea of concentrating on the positive things you can do and have done, and this gets you into the right frame of mind to play chess. So don't be afraid to go back over your games, the ones that you've made notes to, from the past, look at some of your best wins, and this will get you into this very positive frame of mind. Now, I'm going to show you one of my own games from a long time ago. This was played in the Regency Masters in Ramsgate back in 1984. But I recently played my first tournament for 8 years in Hastings, and it was a question of getting myself in the right mood, because, you know, I spend a lot of my time teaching children and adults, and recently gone through the traumatic experience of divorce. I do a lot of travelling in the course of my life, and therefore this wasn't really adding up from where I was seated to the right kind of preparation to play in a master tournament. So what did I do? Well, I went back and I started to look over my past wins against good players, and I eventually came to the conclusion that I could still actually play chess. So here's a game for you from this tournament in Ramsgate back in 1984 against the Dutch international master Albert Blaise. And I must say I was actually quite proud of this game when I saw it, even at the distance of 26 years. Now, the type of opening I was really playing at that time was pretty innocuous, but I was actually quite confident. I remember back in 1984, I was pretty confident that I could play almost anybody from a quiet position at that point. So I tended to avoid mainline theory and stick with stuff like this, double fianchetto, where white objectively gets nothing whatsoever from the opening, and both sides are kind of making it up as they go along. Nothing wrong with b3. But now I look back, I see that the actual truth was that at that time I was too lazy to learn main lines. I mean, that is the actual truth of the matter. If I'd bothered to learn main lines, if I'd put more effort in at that point, I would have been a lot stronger player than that which I am today, a modest international master. Okay, fair enough. But nevertheless, b3, as I've said, there's nothing wrong with it. Black has still got to prove equality as far as I'm concerned. White still has the advantage of a move, the opening move, and he takes note of that with the move c4. White is first to hit in the centre, and he should ensure himself a small edge by these means, but it's nothing too much. Anyway, Blaise is a good player, he's very solid, and he saddles White with hanging pawns. Hanging pawns are basically pawns which can't be protected by other pawns. They're not isolated pawns, but they're almost isolated pawns to a degree. And the general theory of hanging pawns runs as follows. If you have hanging pawns, you want to keep the pieces on. You are looking to play actively, and you're looking for attacking possibilities based on the advance of those pawns at the right moment. Either d5 or c5. I mean, I find c5 a very unattractive move. Really, it seems unlikely that White will be getting in that move, but d5 is much more likely. So that's what you do with hanging pawns. When you're playing against hanging pawns, you should be trying to swap the pieces off, because hanging pawns are a liability in the endgame. You know, they're like isolated pawns there, and they can be systematically attacked, weakened, and destroyed. With Black, you would also be looking to restrain the advance of those pawns. I mentioned the moves d5 and c5 by White. Well, Black should be looking to restrain those moves for as long as possible. And if he manages to exchange the pieces and restrain the advance of the pawn, particularly the move d5, I think, is a worry to Black, then Black should be in good shape. Stylistically, I recognise now that I was fine with hanging pawns, and that, as we'll see, I think I play these positions rather well. Even today, I do understand that if White doesn't maintain the initiative in a position like this, then, you know, it all tends to fizzle out and he becomes instantly worse. So I was happy to play this position even then. Alright, so Black developed his knight, and he played his rook to c8. I played my rook to c1, anticipating pressure on c4, and he played rook c7. And I can see his plan. He wants to go queen a8 and then to double rooks, either on the c file or maybe even on the d file. This didn't worry me too much, as I felt that when the queen goes to a8, for instance as here, she's drifting quite a long way from the king side. Now I played knight h4. This seems like a slightly paradoxical move, because I've already said that exchanging pieces tends not to favour the guy with the hanging pawns. Well, I was happy, because if bishop takes g2, knight takes g2, rook fc8, knight e3, queen b7, and now d5 is rather nice for white. That was the position I was seeing in my mind's eye, and I was rather looking forward to playing it, because if he takes d5, knight f5, and suddenly black is under pressure. White has found a good moment to advance his hanging pawns, and now he's got pressure on the black king side. So just going back to knight h4, Blaise continued with his plan. He played rook fc8. And now comes the key to the white attack, d5. I found the right moment to advance this pawn, and naturally the attack on the king side stands every chance of success with that black queen a long way away on a8. Reti likes such moves, queen into the corner, but just because he played them on occasion, it doesn't mean that they are good in every case. I'm sure a lot of players think they're stylish putting their queen in the corner, but the fact is, you're leaving your king side at the mercy of white's pieces. Well, black took this pawn, and I think I didn't play the best move here, bishop e5, but it's a good move. With the benefit of 26 years, I can now see that knight f5 is much stronger, and there are two ideas. If black goes bishop f8, it's very simple. We just chop on f6, queen g4 check, and now queen d4. I mean, this is obviously terrific for white. If after knight f5, black goes bishop d8, slightly more complicated, the knight comes into d6, rook e7, queen d3, d takes c4, knight 2 takes c4, bishop takes g2, and now the tactical shot, which I've been preparing, the complicated knight takes b6. Again, the tactics flow after rook takes rook, knight takes a8, rook takes d1, queen takes d1, and now bishop takes a8. Here I prepare bishop takes f6, with, I think, a winning position for white. Okay, well, this was all very, very complicated stuff. It's a winning position for white. Let me just point this out. G takes f6, knight f5. The problem is there are just too many threats for black to be able to defend himself. So, yes, some measure of calculation is called for in a position with hanging pawns, in a complex position like this, but I was up to the task at that moment in my career. And that, you know, when I look back, I thought to myself, yes, I can play chess here, I can calculate. This is the type of position I should be angling for. Well, Blaise put his rook on c6, knight f5, and now the bishop came into a3. Rook c3, that helps me to a degree, because the rook may develop some activity on the third rank. Bishop b4, forcing the pace, and now my favourite move of the game, c takes d5. White sacrifices on c3 in order to smash open black's king. And it was pretty clear to me that Blaise was not enjoying this experience. He obviously can't take the bishop because of queen g4 check, so he goes in for an exchange of rooks. Bishop takes g7, completely stripping open the king. It doesn't matter that black is able to exchange off some pieces. Just look at the pieces that remain on the board, and you'll see why black can't defend his king here. Rook c4, and now a rather ironic touch that I really very much enjoyed. Queen a1. I really found that move quite amusing. I mean, it is very, very funny that it's the white queen going into the corner that's the winning move in this game. Well, black's king, what can he play? He can't play queen c8 because of knight e7 check. He can't bring the queen to the rescue. None of his other pieces can come to the rescue. He tried to bring his king to h7, queen f6. That decides proceedings. I really enjoyed this game at the time because it won me first prize in the tournament, and I really enjoyed looking at it 26 years later when I was trying to get myself into the right mood. So to summarise, get yourself into a good mood before important games or important tournaments by looking over your back catalogue. You can't do any harm in doing it, and psychologically, which makes you feel good about yourself, very positive frame of